Hello friends, it's Kate Lanagan MacGregor, and at this time I would like to cover the examination content outlines for the salesperson and broker exam. And I like to cover this, and I really like to start you with this, I like to finish you with this, and I like to refer to this often in the middle of the course because it's important to know what they think is important, because if there's two huge books to read, or at least one huge book and one smaller book, that's a lot of content, right? So what do they think is important? And so what this covers here is the number of questions that are being asked, okay? And these are the number of scored questions, okay? So for salesperson, it's 80. For state, it's 40. And for both, it's 120. Okay, and that is the same for the brokers. And the time allowed, they give you 150 minutes, 90 minutes, so a total of 240 minutes for both. And on the right-hand side there, what you'll see is it says, in addition to the number of questions per exam, a small number of 5 to 10 experimental questions may be administered to candidates during the exam. These questions will not be scored, and the time taken to answer them will not count against the exam time. The administration of such non-scored experimental questions is an essential step in developing future license exams. So these are the ones I was talking about. The first year, I think that a question goes on. It's an experimental question. So let us start on the left-hand column here, and that is property ownership. On the salesperson exam, that's 8% of the questions, and then for broker exam, that's 10%. Okay, so if there's 80 scored questions, that would be 8 questions for broker and probably 7 questions for salesperson. And that's real versus personal property, conveyances, land characteristics and legal descriptions, types of legal descriptions, meets and bounds, lock and block, government survey, measuring structures, livable, rentable, and usable area, land measurement, mineral air and water rights, encumbrances and effect on property ownership, liens, easements, encroachments, other potential encumbrances of title, types of ownership, tenancy in common, joint tenancy, common interest ownership, timeshares, condominiums, and co-ops, ownership and severalty / sole ownership, life estate ownership, and then it says here broker ownership held in trust, and that's for broker only. So that could conceivably be that last question that you would have versus the salesperson. To give you an idea, a salesperson is more definition oriented, whereas the broker class is more relationship oriented. So while they will ask you a question that has like the same subject in it, what they will do is they will, again, look for the definition and to see that you know what it is on the salesperson's, whereas on the broker, they're more about if you know what to do with it, okay? So the second part is land use controls and regulations, and that's 5% each. So that would be what? Four questions, right? About. And that's government rights in land, property taxes and special assessments, eminent domain, condemnation is cheat, government controls, zoning and master plans, building codes, regulation of special land types, flood zones, wetlands, regulation of environmental hazards, types of hazards, abatement and mitigation, restrictions on contaminated property, private control, deed conditions and restrictions, covenants, conditions and restrictions, CC&Rs, homeowners association regulations. Okay, so there you go. Where would you get 4 questions out of those? Part 3 is valuation and market analysis, and that's 7% and broker 7%. So probably about 5 questions each, right? So appraisals would be the purpose and use of appraisals for valuation, general steps in the appraisal process, situations requiring appraisal by a certified appraiser, estimating value, effect of economic principles and property characteristics, sales or market comparison approach, cost approach, income analysis approach, competitive / comparable market analysis, selecting comparables and adjusting comparables. Okay, for financing, it's 10% and 8%. Again, so that'd be 8 questions and probably 7 questions. Basic concepts and terminology. Points, loan to value, PMI, interest, pity, financial instruments, mortgage, promissory note, etc. Types of loans, conventional loans, FHA insured loans, VA guaranteed loans, USDA rural loan programs. Okay, so you will learn about a lot of loans, right, as you're going through the reading. This is telling you which ones they think are important. Amortized loans, adjustable rate mortgage loans, bridge loans, okay, owner financing, which is called the installment in land contract or contract for deed. Okay, financial and lending process application through closing, financing and credit laws and rules, which is truth in lending, RESPA, equal credit opportunity, CFPB/TRID rules on financing and risky loan features, underwriting, debt ratios, credit scoring, and credit history. Okay, so we're into part 5, which is general principles of agency. Salesperson's 13% and broker 11%. Okay, so you see that they're thinking that a broker would know a lot about agency. So that would probably be about 9 or 10 questions, salesperson, and probably 8 questions, maybe 9 for the broker. Agency and non-agency relationship, types of agents and agencies, other brokerage relationships, transactional, facilitators, agents' duties to clients, fiduciary responsibilities, traditional agency duties, okay? And they have COLD there, which is what we call what? Old car, right? Power of attorney and other delegation of authority, and creation of agency and non-agency agreements, disclosure of conflicts of interest, agency and agency agreements, key elements in different types of listing contracts, key elements of buyer brokerage tenant relationship contracts, disclosure when acting as principal or other conflict of interest, responsibilities of agent to customers and third parties, including disclosure, honesty, integrity, and accounting for money, termination of agency, expiration, completion of performance, termination by force of law, destruction of property and death of principal, or mutual agreement. Okay? Property disclosures, 6% and 7%. So that would be probably 5 questions, right? So 5 questions. We'll say 5 to 6 questions. Property condition, property conditions that may warrant inspections and surveys, proposed uses or change in uses that should trigger inquiry about public or private land use controls, environmental issues requiring disclosure, government disclosure requirements or lead, and then material, facts, and defect disclosure. Okay. So interesting, there's only like 4, 5, 6 things that they listed there, and then that would be about the same percentage that we had. So pretty much if they're writing about it in this case, it's probably got to be there somehow on the test. All right, again, by definition for salesperson, by relationship for broker, context, right? All right, contracts, salesperson 17%, broker 18%. So in contracts, that would be about what, 13, 14 questions, right? Maybe 15 questions. No, more like 12 or 13. All right, so general knowledge of contract law, requirements for validity, factors affecting enforceability of contracts, voidable, unenforceable contracts, right and obligations of parties to a contract, executory and executed contracts, notice, delivery and acceptance of contracts, breach of contract and remedies for breach, termination, rescission, and cancellation of contracts, electronic signatures in paperless transactions, bilateral versus unilateral contracts, contract clauses, including amendments and addenda, offers, purchase agreements, general requirements, when offer becomes binding, contingencies, time is of the essence, counter offers, multiple offers, and it talks about counter offers, multiple offers. Okay, so that was a pretty heady one, right? There's quite a few in there. This one, leasing and property management, salesperson 3%, broker 5%. So we're talking about maybe 1 or 2 or 3 questions, right? So basic concepts and duty of property management, lease agreements, types of leases, for example, percentage, gross, net, or ground, key elements and provisions of lease agreements, landlord and tenants' rights and obligations, property managers' fiduciary responsibilities, ADA and fair housing compliance and property management, and setting rents and lease rates, okay, and that would be for brokers only, okay? Title of transfer, 8% and then 7% for broker. Okay, so we're talking what, like 7 or 8 questions, right? 7 questions, 7, right? 6 or 7 questions. Title insurance. What is insured against? Title searches, title abstracts, chain of title. Marketable versus insurable title. Potential title problems and resolution. Cloud on title, suit to quiet title, and that would be for broker only. Deeds, purpose of deed, when title passes, types of deeds and when used, essential element of deeds, importance of recording. Okay, escrow or closing, tax aspects of transferring title to real property, responsibilities of escrow agent, prorated items, closing statement and TRID disclosures, estimating closing costs, property and income taxes. So our special processes are foreclosures and short sales. Warranties, the purpose of home or construction warranty programs, and then the scope of home or general construction warranty programs. Okay, number 10, practice of real estate. So we've got 13% and 14%. So we're talking about 10 questions. Trust escrow accounts. Purpose and definition of trust accounts, including monies held in trust accounts. Responsibility for trust monies, including commingling and conversion. Federal fair housing laws in the ADA. Protected classes. Prohibited conduct, that would be redlining, blockbusting, or steering. American with Disabilities Act. Exemptions. And we have advertising and technology. Advertising practices. So we've got truth in advertising, fair housing issues in advertising. Again, a lot of these things have been showing up on exams. Use of technology, requirements for confidential information, the do not call list. Licensee and responsibilities. Employee, independent contractor, due diligence for real estate transactions, supervisory responsibilities, this is broker only. Licensees, unlicensed personnel, and then antitrust laws and purpose, and antitrust violations in real estate. All right, real estate calculations. We've got salesperson 10% and brokers 8%. So this would be part of what we consider for the math, right? Basic math concepts. Loan to value ratios, discount points, equity, down payment, and the amount to be financed. Calculations for transactions, property tax calculations, prorations, commissions and commission splits, seller's proceeds of sale, buyer funds needed at closing, transfer fee, conveyance tax, revenue stamps, and then PITI. Again, we've seen PITI twice now, right? Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance payments, and calculations for valuation and rate of return. And then for broker only, they add in net operating income, depreciation, capitalization rate, and gross rent and gross income multipliers. So that is the general. Now, if there are 100, if there are 120 scored, 80 scored questions, how many wrong can you get to hit 70%? So that number is 24, right? So 24 is 70%. So there's a lot of information on here. There's a lot of content, right? But you can get 24 questions wrong, right? I hope you don't get it that close to the wire, but that is just some numbers for you. Okay, so let's go into the state portion, which is 40 scored questions, which would mean what? 12 questions wrong, right? Okay, so 40 questions total. Duties and powers of the Real Estate Board of Registration of Real Estate Brokers and Salespersons, 5%. Salesperson, 2 items, broker, 2 items. Examination of records, sanctions, fines, and license suspension and revocation. And again, they do like to ask these types of questions. They're very dry on this. The next is activities requiring a license, types of licenses, active, inactive, and expired. License renewal and continuing education, and board notifications. The next is requirements governing licensees. So there'll be 13 items for salespersons and 14 items for brokers. Advertising, broker-salesperson relationship, commissions, disclosures, which would be the consumer-licensee relationship, conflict of interest, rental fee disclosures, agency and non-agency relationships, handling of documents, handling of monies, record keeping, this is broker only, and home inspectors, licensee responsibility. Okay, So we have under 4, we have contracts. So 2 items for both: offer to purchase, which is also called a contract to purchase, purchase and sale agreement, leases, and listing and buyer agreements. Consumer protection laws. Okay, 5 items for salespersons, 4 for broker. Property disclosures, misrepresentation, privacy, sanction and enforcements. Okay, environmental issues and hazardous materials. By the way, this comes up a lot when people leave. Like they just didn't study it the same way they studied other things. Okay, so 4 items both: lead, private sewage disposal, smoke and carbon monoxide detection. And here's where we see a lot: wetlands and rivers protection. Okay, Massachusetts Fair Housing Law. This is 4 items each. Protected classes that differ from federal, Massachusetts specific exceptions, Mass Commission Against Discrimination, and ADA and other accommodations. Landlord-tenant law, 10%, so 4 each. Rental deposits, receipts and statements of condition, state sanitary code, short-term vacation or rental recreational rentals. All right, additional topics on this are ownership, condominiums and co-ops, timeshares, and registered land. Okay, so that is our content for what's on the exam. Stay tuned for another awesome video on what's next.